One thing that I've been particularly interested in is really looking at the linkages between Silicon Valley, which is the most entrepreneurial geography in the United States, and Africa, which has all these exciting entrepreneurial opportunities that we're talking about today. And one thing that struck me in Teresa's talk was that two of the innovations that she talked about, Ushahidi and Sahara Text, are two organizations that have both been funded by Media Networks, which is right here in the audience. And also actually just yesterday, they also announced that they were going to be funding African Leadership Academy. We have three representatives from media here, and I'd just like to throw it out to you, Amy, or Arjuna, Amy. What sort of, how are you seeing Africa, and what lessons are you learning as through these exciting innovations that you've been supporting that you can share maybe with the rest of the group here? Amy Clement.
I'll comment quickly, and then I'd love to pass the microphone to my colleague Arjuna, as he's driving most of our work in Africa. As someone who comes from Silicon Valley, I spent the previous 10 years at PayPal and at eBay. It's been amazing to see the innovation that's coming from Africa, particularly Kenya around M-Pesa, which is still up on the screen here. Thank you for that. There's really tremendous innovation that's happening because of sort of what I view as the proliferation of the mobile phone, right? I mean, even with these very, very basic mobile phones, there's just so much that can be done, whether it's around health, education, agriculture, technology for government transparency, social networking. Obviously, sort of the same needs, the same inherent human needs exist all over the world. So we've made actually a host of investments on the technology for government transparency side, but we're also just excited to see innovation across all of the sectors that frankly impact humanity. So I'm going to pass the microphone to my colleague.
So thanks, Fred. Just like to make one interesting point, which is, in addition to funding Ushahidi, we funded what is a physical site for social networking for technology entrepreneurs in Kenya. It's called the iHub. It's an open space, much like the hubs in San Francisco and you'd see in Digital Alley in New York or something. And it's a space where technologists come and program. And I've been working in Africa for about 15 years now, and I was at the iHub a couple of months back and went and talked to somebody and said, "So what's this place like?" And he turns to me and goes, "Oh, it's your usual mix of avant-garde artists, graphic designers, mobile money entrepreneurs." And in all of the time I've spent in Africa, I'd never heard that. The usual mix of avant-garde artists and mobile entrepreneurs. So I really sense that there's this change, and some of it is people like Funky, who's going back to Nigeria and building Main One. There's sort of an inflection point in an enthusiasm about going back and building businesses. I think ALA, and the reason we're supporting it and we're so excited about what you're doing, is you're creating a real fertile ground to take entrepreneurs and new leaders and sort of transform their lives, and hopefully they go back and they have that multiplier effect of having long-term change. I think the technology is a big piece of it, but the human capital that's going back, or that's homegrown, is a huge piece of it as well. I think this goes back to the earlier question I'd addressed to Teresa, which is how do we get systemic change at the top as well? Because a lot of these entrepreneurs we see are succeeding despite the odds.
Great.
So we're just, if we could rewind 50 years and put ALA into Africa, and we'd have a new generation of leaders today, I think that, the landscape would be very different. But big fans of yours, and as you mentioned, love to continue supporting your work.
Thank you very much, Anju. So in closing, I'd just like to ask one question to each of the panelists. from your session this morning, you all seem to agree on one thing, that Africa's future is bright. What I'm curious to know is, so there's a party going on. What's the one thing that you think could stop this party? The greatest risk that you see, to all this potential that we've outlined this morning, coming to crash down.
I mean, I'm happy to start. I think, Africa's, to date, the failure has been a failure of leadership. Bart Hardenon's point, right? It's been an absolute failure of leadership. There's significant momentum, but there's still huge risks. And I think until we fix the leadership problems in Africa, and that's what we're trying to do with ALA, and that's what, Mo Ibrahim is trying to do. But until we fix that, we would never really, have see the numbers that Teresa has shown around, tapping into the full potential of the continent, right? So I think leadership is the biggest issue that needs to be addressed.
Along the same lines, I guess what keeps me awake at night is a fear that, and this gets to Arjuna's earlier question as well, that we do have 7 leaders who've been in power for more than 20 years. And as we're seeing, some of them are coming under some pressure. And the fear I have is it could lead to a very ugly transition. It won't be smooth. It would be ugly, and we could go into, as we saw in Cote d'Ivoire, it can have spillover effects to neighboring countries. So there's a real risk that this, what started in Tunisia and Egypt, could spread to the continent, but it could spread in a way that does some long-term damage rather than is a beneficial one.
Thank you.
As usual, you asked me to follow the others, so I have to be particularly creative here. I think that in addition to the very good points that have been made, I think, as we saw with Japan, I mean, the things that we can't control, natural disasters, I think that if there were some natural disaster that affected one of the larger economies, it could really play havoc in achieving some of the goals that we are hoping for, and that could be the evolution of a new disease as AIDS sort of took hold by surprise. I think that if we had any sort of natural disaster like earthquakes and floods and so forth, that could be a very significant hindrance to achieving the goals we talked about.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank our panelists this morning for a truly scintillating discussion.